This podcast, I'm going to teach you how you too can be a representative of the United States of America. The Founding Fathers made it kind of easy for us. But first, I want to start by explaining to you about one time in my life when I was a representative for someone else. As a mother, I had the opportunity to represent my child with 5 or 6 other mothers at our elementary school before the principal. I'm going to show you this because I think it will add a little bit to this. An older male teacher was teaching 3rd grade with a challenging class. There were 10 children in his class that were extremely intelligent, mischievous, and sneaky. My daughter was one of them. They were bored most of the time. These kids were from the same neighborhood and church, and they were best friends. After this year of school, they were never allowed to all be together in the same classroom. The teacher, however, was about to retire and had old methods of discipline. He would pick up the boys by their collar and hold them eyeball to eyeball and yell at them. He would tie kids to a chair, he'd lock them in his closet, and the last straw for all of us was when he duct taped the smallest boy in the class to the door. A teacher walked by and saw him taped there. He went to the principal, who came and got the boy down. We as parents went as a group of representatives to the principal to demand the removal of this teacher. The teacher was removed. Having someone who cares and understands your needs represent you can make a big difference. It did for my daughter. Choosing who is your state House of Representatives or your representative for the federal government is an important decision. Electing someone who cares and understands your needs is your responsibility. Having learned about the preamble of the Constitution in our last podcast, we're now finally starting the Constitution. Article 1 is all about the legislative branch of the federal government. This is why I started with a story about representatives. Congress is the House of Representatives and the Senate. Legislation, which it's called the legislative branch because they are the ones that put through the legislation, and that means a formal process of making rules and laws. Once voted on and passed, a legislation becomes a binding law for everyone in the United States. That is why we have a Congress. The Constitution is broken up into articles and sections. It has several articles in it, but we're going to just go through Article 1 today, Section 1 and 2. Article 1 has 10 sections, and we're just going to briefly go through some of this. All legislative powers herein shall be vested in Congress of the United States, which shall consist of the Senate and the House of Representatives. They are called Congress. They're the two-eyed branch of the government. Remember our three-headed eagle, and the middle one has 2 eyes. One eye is for the House, one eye is for the Senate. They make the laws for our country, and they are your representatives. Meaning every American has the right not to be subject to a federal law unless it is approved by the representatives in Congress, meaning the state and the House. Originally, this was the founders' way of having future generations with few and well-defined federal laws. Because large amount of law had been changed, it makes it hard for me to go straight through the Constitution from the beginning. So many changes have dissolved the original concepts and replaced them with amendments. I will, however, do my best to explain the Constitution and the amendments. The House number of representatives is determined in each state according to their population. The Senate has, however, 2 representatives from each state. It was made this way so the population was equally represented. The House and the Senate both have to be in agreement for a bill to be passed. This created a check and balance in the legislative branch. Um, Originally the Senate was to be elected from the House, and so originally for the first few years of the Constitution, you would elect your representatives, go to the House, and then they would have an election and elect some of their members from each state to go into the Senate and to be the Senate. But in 1913, we had the 17th Amendment, and it says senators are to be elected by the people of the states, and so this came about and changed. The House of Representatives that's all of Section 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution. That's all it talks about. Then Section 2, it talks about just the House of Representatives, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Members of the House will be elected by qualified voters in each state, which a qualified voter was, back then, was a man who was 21 years of age. And we're going to talk about some other qualifications in a minute because it goes down into qualifications. The Constitution placed few problems between ordinary citizens and becoming a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. The founders wanted the House to be the closest to the people. Out of all the elected offices for federal government, the House requires the least restrictions. The door of this part of the federal government is open to merit and of every description, whether native-born citizen or adopted, whether young or old, without regard to poverty or wealth, or to the particular profession you have, or your religious faith. This is the way of introducing the republic form of government and the democracy form of government. This double duty makes the United States a democratic republic type of government. It was the first of its kind. A republic government, I'm going to switch over to this while I'm talking about it. The republic government, there's 3 types. The people are their own representatives, and they pass the laws and operate the government. The people do. The 3 types are a unitary, which is all power is vested in the central government, and that is like Great Britain. The next one is all power to the units or states, and it's called the Confederation of States. Very little power to the central government, and this is what the southern states were during the Civil War. And then there's the federal type of republic. It is the will of the people with a constitution. This type divides central government responsibilities from the family to the governor, and then from the people or the family to the 3 branches of government. And so you elect people who represent you. That's why it's called a republic. Now, democracy is a Greek word meaning people and government. And everyone voting can only work in small groups, never in a state or a nation. The Greeks tried it in Athens, and it was a messy failure. The founders wanted freedom of government for the people and still avoid the loopholes of pure democracy where everyone votes on a law and justice. It worked out to have mass participation in voting for representatives in states. That way, everyone gets a say. Then let the republic government fall into place and the representatives pass new laws and bills. Um, so you have um, the people being able to vote individually. Every person in the whole nation votes for a candidate, and then the candidate becomes your representative to go meet in Washington D.C. to make and pass laws and bills. So it was the best of both worlds. It was the first time this was ever done. The second section also gives clear direction to representatives what they're supposed to be doing and what their qualifications are. Elections take place every 2 years for the House of Representatives. A person elected has 2 years and then he can be reelected if the people like how he's working back in Washington, D.C. for them. Number 2 is you must be an American citizen for 7 years, and you have to be a citizen of the state you're representing, and you have to be living in that state and have lived there for a couple of years. The next one is you must be 25 years old on the day that you're sworn in. This was really well debated. The people in Congress were trying to come up with an age for people, for representatives. And they, since they knew that a man had to be at least 21 because that was the date, that was the age that they had set for a man to be able to legally vote, who was a citizen. And so some of them felt like that was still kind of young because people would just be getting through with their education and or just getting started in a business and hadn't been out in the real world long enough to really get the pulse of the people and understand where their needs were and where the problems were and how to solve some of those problems, because they would have had to have done that in their own company or work or farm or whatever they were working with. So they decided on the age of 25. Now, when I was, 19, 20 years old, I had to make some big decisions. And so I loved to hike up a mountain that was just behind where my apartments were when I attended Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And it's called Y Mountain. And it is, you can see the Y. It's lit up with lights around it now, but it used to be just rock. And every year we'd make a pilgrimage up to it and whitewash it. And you can see that there's it's kind of steep and there's drop-offs here and there. Well, I climbed up above the Y and took a light blanket with me. And I was there towards evening. I was through with classes and work, and so I was there. And I could see out over the valley. I could see Utah Lake from where I was at. And laying there and thinking about things and looking at the clouds, I fell asleep. And I woke up, and when I woke up, it was really pitch dark. And it was slightly overcast, and I couldn't see 2 feet in front of me. And when you go to hike up that mountain, there's signs periodically along the foothills that say, beware of rocks, and it's steep and not recommended for climbing. There's drop offs and cliff drop offs and that type of thing. So it's not recommended for climbing. So I just went past those signs and went my merry way, which my children know I do that periodically. And they and so I ended up in trouble because I wasn't keeping the law. And when I came down, it took me a long time, and twice I almost fell off a drop off that all of a sudden the earth ended, and it was a drop off of 6 to 8 feet. So at 19 or 20, I was making poor decisions and hadn't lived long enough to be able to make some real wise decisions in my life. By the time I was 25, I had a couple of children. I was well grounded, and I knew where my problems were and um where I felt like the government should be in making decisions for my life. So we let's see. We have 25 years of age in order to be in the House of Representatives. That is the youngest. The ages, the years of citizenship and the age change for the Senate and for the president. The next one is that the number of the House of Representatives is according to the population. And we had slaves that were counted as 3/5 of a person. And so out of every 5 slaves, they could count 3. And this came about because the convention of delegates were asking a vote for, should the House be based on the total population? And so you can have so many representatives according to what your population is. And the South said, yes, count us, yes. And then later on in the convention, the question was asked, should direct taxes be decided according to population? And then they're thinking, maybe we were a little hasty. And they thought, no, because our population would be a lot, and we don't want that kind of taxation. So the South had to decide. They couldn't have it both ways. So they decided that they would count 3 slaves. For every 5 slaves, they would count 3 of them. Some states had a lot of Indians in them too, and they could count those Indians if they paid their taxes, if they were holding down a job and paying taxes. But if they weren't paying taxes, supporting the government, then they couldn't be counted in the population for that state. So that's how they decided the state populations. Um, I have a story I wanted to share with you that will kind of show you where people were uh, about racial prejudice when I was a girl in the 1950s. I was the luckiest girl in the 3rd grade. My partner was the best dancer. Matter of fact, he was the only dancer. The other boys just shuffled and groaned. Jerry liked to dance and made it so much fun. This really was a big deal because we were learning not only a square dance, but the polka for my Mother's Day program. If you've ever danced the polka, if you've never danced the polka, you've not lived yet. The energy, the inertia, the man-made wind, it's all exhilarating. A good dance partner is essential to keep each of you going with that kind of inertia. You combine the determination of 2 energetic 3rd graders twirling at top speed, and you have 20 other 3rd graders running for cover. A few slow ones got bumped and bruised, but I didn't care. I didn't create any mass major medical emergencies, and it was so much fun. We were closely supervised after our first couple of days of practice, but we got better and better and the more we practiced. I was so excited for this performance. Each day, I would give an update to my family at the dinner table. Mother was looking forward to coming to see me dance. I even heard her tell a neighbor how well I was doing and how much I loved dancing. A big day came, and we were all lined up in the hall. Mothers were seated in the gym, anticipating our grand entrance. Our teacher walked up and down the line of nervous children, telling the boys to tuck in their shirt and smiling, "You can do it," a smile at them. When she got to Jerry and I, she just said, "Please slow down. Don't bump into anybody and stay in the circle. Understand?" We both nodded our heads yes. Our clue was played and we entered the gym. The boys looked at the floor and shuffled their feet at the imposed dread that was ahead of them. And the girls obviously were nervous and biting their lips. And then there was Jerry and I, heads high, smiling, beaming from ear to ear as we pranced in. Of course, every child was looking for their mother's face. I spotted my mother, but she just stared at me. It was one of those hard to read expressions. She was either in pain or in shock. I was concerned, but the show must go on. When we did the polka, I forgot all about the mothers being there, and we just performed, and the performing ham came out in me. I smiled, I twirled, and I loved it. I knew we had done well. To be honest, we were terrific. After the program, we took refreshments to our mothers and sat with them. And my mother asked me who the little black boy was. I looked around and then I told her, "I don't know what you mean." I didn't know any little black boy. And then she said to me, "The little black boy you were dancing with." For the first time in my life, I looked at Jerry and realized, he's black. I really hadn't noticed before. I explained that to my mother, and she just said, "Well, you were right. He's a terrific dancer." My mother told me years later that in that moment she realized my pure heart had not been taught prejudice, and she kept her feelings to herself about her daughter dancing with a little black boy. She spent many years fighting the ingrained prejudice she had been taught by society. During all this time, I never knew the internal struggle she was contending with. I just knew that growing up with Jerry, he was a great kid. Most people from the other generations, um, I don't know why I'm crying. I think it's because I'm thinking of my mother. Um, Most people from other generations and centuries thought nothing of the slave situation. They truly didn't approve of cruelty, but showed little respect for them as a person. It has taken 100 years to get us where we are today. Now there are no slaves, and every person is counted in the population, and every person, adult person that's a citizen, can vote. Okay, the next part is in order to know how many delegates there could be from each of the states, they had to have a census of the population. So um, they decided that 3 years after the Constitution, and then every 10 years after that, they would have a census taken. Um, in in 1787 is when the Constitution was made, and in 1790 was the first census, and then the next census was in 1800. So in the year of 1790 was the first census, and there were 3,929,000 and some odd. And then they took the census in the 1800s. It was 5 million. In 1810, it was 7 million. It made a jump of 2 million regularly every 10 years for a while in the United States. There was that many people coming here. To avoid having too many members of the House of Representatives, because the population was growing so drastically, they decided they would have one member to represent every 30,000 people. If seat vacancies occur, either people died or they were ill or something drastic had happened in their life, or they were sent to jail or prison for some reason, then they couldn't be a delegate anymore. They decided that the governor of the state needed to call an election, and they needed to elect a new person to be a delegate for the people. They didn't want people, the governor or the other delegates, to just find one of their best friends and, hey, come on, buddy, you can be a representative because we got a vacancy we need to fill. They didn't want that to happen. They wanted everything to remain with the people being in charge. So there has to be another election to fill in that space for the amount of time until that 2 years would be up, and then they would have full elections again. Okay, the next one is the House, the people who have been elected in the House. One of the first things they do is they have a vote, and they vote for one of them from any state to be the Speaker of the House, the one who directs their when they're in Congress, when they're in session, and he sits at like a pulpit, only it's seated, and he calls them to order, and he runs the whole show, and they elect him. Okay, then the next thing that the founders wanted in the Constitution was that the House of Representatives and the Senate have the authority to impeach judges and executive branch, the president and vice president. So they put this impeachment in there more as an intimidation than anything, so that they would know that they couldn't pull any shenanigans. They would be impeached if they did. The closest we came to that was one of our presidents, and he resigned. It was Reagan, Ronald Reagan. He resigned because they were threatening to impeach him. Okay, then the House will choose all officers needed to function in the House and to organize themselves. So to be an organized unit, they need to have a few people there that are heading up different departments. One of them is, and I'm sure you've heard of some of these before, the committee chairman. There's several committee chairmen, and they lead meetings to prepare the verbiage and make sure the legalities and everything is correct to pass a bill, and they get it all ready to present to the representatives to vote on. And so these committee chairmen have people assigned, different representatives assigned to them from their own, usually from their own party that they're running from, either Republican, Democratic, or Independent. And they meet in committee meetings and get these bills ready to present. And then there's somebody called the party whip. I know it sounds really vicious. And they make sure that all the party members vote and follow party's agenda. Each party writes like its own little agenda of what they want to accomplish with bills and amendments to help the population in the United States. And so the Republican Party has certain things that they want, and the Democratic Party has certain things that they want. And that's all decided later on. But this party whip um, does the, well, let's see. Okay. The party whip is one of the things that they do is they hand the mace to the speaker to start each session. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, I didn't know they sprayed mace on them. What's going on in Congress? But a mace is an object, a wooden object that is placed before the Speaker of the House. It's not the spray kind of mace to calm people down. And so, anyway, that's one of the things the party whips does. Now, this all starts at the grassroots, and grassroots party meetings happen in neighborhoods, and it is announced locally where it will be, and people are invited. If you want to go to the Republican Party's grassroots or the Democratic or the Independent, you are welcome to go there. It's a bunch of your neighbors, and you guys will all talk about what's your problems and what you would like the government to do to help you. And you will also have a proposed agenda from that party of things that they want to work in Congress with, bills they want to pass. And you give your 2 cents worth about that. And then you elect from that grassroots neighborhood party a person to go to the city and represent you in your neighborhood. And then your city has a grassroots party meeting, and they debate the same things, and they talk about what the people have said in their neighborhoods, and they come up with something that they want to present to the county. Then the county meets with their representatives. You elect a representative from your city to go to the county. The county meets, they do the exact same thing. And then the county goes to the state meetings, and they have a state party meeting, and they talk about all these things. And then they elect people to go to delegates to go to the national party, and they present things there, and then it's voted on there by the people from all of the states who have come there as representatives for their grassroots program. And they decide what the party's agenda is going to be for the next couple of years. And that's how agendas grow. And then when people are elected and in the as a House of Representatives, then um, they have to abide by those party rules because they're representing people from that party. And that's what the party whip is about. He is to remind them, and he's to make sure that each party member gets a chance to vote. Okay. Another thing that you need to know is this type of thing, party identification, can create a trifecta type of government. A trifecta is when a party has full control over the legislature, when most of the states are all Republican or Democratic or independent. And during this process, the the different parties, their agendas, such as voting on labor union laws and abortion, those are all hot topics right now. They in Congress, a trifecta government is crucial for controlling parties to take advantage of Congress voting because they have the majority. In 2024, there was a one party that controlled the president, the House, and the Senate. And today, it's a different party that controls in 2026. On a state level, there are 23 Republican states, 16 Democratic states, and 11 divided states. Historically, these periods of full control only last 2 years. This is because every 2 years there's an election for the House of Representatives, and then things change again. During election years, you will see trifecta maps up showing red states, blue states, yellow states, or whatever color they decide. And that represents how many states are voting Republican, Democratic, and then everybody has a heads up knowing they can see the picture of what's happening, that somebody's going to be way in charge in Congress when they get there because so many are Republicans or Democrats. So it's a big thing. Okay, then there's a clerk that has to be called to record the votes and to check everybody's credentials. And then there's a sergeant of arms that's called. And this sergeant of arms is called in the House, but he also is a sergeant of arms for the Senate. And he enforces the rules and keeps order. And he's the one in charge of the mace. That's the one who's in charge of the mace, not the speaker, the sergeant at arms. Okay, then you have somebody who's a doorkeeper. He's not a doorman. Well, he is kind of, but that isn't just it. The doorkeeper controls admission to the room where Congress meets. And he's over the document room, so all documents that they're talking about are sealed and protected. The keeper of the door is a messenger from the president to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And if the president wants to get a message to them while they're in session, he contacts the doorkeeper. The doorkeeper goes to him, and he either verbally or written takes the message to the Speaker of the House. And then there's the postmaster, and I'm only mentioning him because I was amazed. He is in charge of handling 50 million letters a year with mail security. That's a lot of mail going into the Congress. And then there's the chaplain who offers prayers at the beginning of each session. That was suggested by Benjamin Franklin. And we still do it today. And then he's over the prayer room, which is in the building where the Congress meets, so that the representatives or senators can go there anytime they want. And then there are pages. And a page is between the ages of 16 and 18. They have a very strict dress code, and they have to have a C average at school, and they have to pass security. And they sit on the steps, and then when one of the representatives needs a messenger, they raise their hand, and these pages run to them and get the message either verbally or on a piece of paper and take it to the person that he needs to send the message to. Because there's sometimes they want to privately communicate with each other in there, and they need to have a way to get a message to and from each other. And they're not allowed to use their phones while they're in there, so there's no texting going on. Okay, the legislative branch is granted the power to make laws. The reason for two parts is so they could have checks and balances with each other. These men come from all walks of life. They're rich and poor. Their morals align with either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the Independent Party. They spend a lot of hours researching information, debating, and getting words just right to present new ideas to all of Congress to vote on. Trying to keep the people's rights and compromising to make things work well for everyone is their goal. After being elected in November, you could go to report to Washington, D.C. on the 1st of December, and after your election, the Speaker of the House would have all the representatives stand, and the people will be sworn in by raising their right arm to the square and repeating the oath all together. The Speaker does this, and it is recorded. And this is the oath. This is what I wanted to end with today. This is the oath of the office to be a member of the Federal House of Representatives. I do solemnly swear, affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. I respect most of these representatives, and I hope you do too. May God be with you till we meet again.